CTV News has confirmed that Sweden's Saab, the maker of the Gripen fighter jet, wants Ottawa to add the aircraft to its fleet. CTV's Bombshell is in Stockholm.
Fresh developments aimed squarely at Moscow. NATO chief Mark Rutte has unveiled a new mission designed to deter any more Russian drone incursions into NATO countries.
Saab and seemingly the government of Sweden and maybe even the royal family try to get Canada to purchase their Gripen fighter jet.
For decades, the Western Alliance ran on an unspoken expectation that when the biggest strategic decisions arrived, Canada would fall neatly into line with its southern neighbor. Not out of weakness, but out of habit. Washington planned for it. NATO assumed it. And Ottawa often behaved as if the default setting of Canadian defense policy was simply to wait for the next American platform and sign the paperwork when the moment finally came. That is why what is happening right now feels so disruptive, because for years the story barely changed. Canada kept its CF-18 fleet flying far longer than anyone originally intended. Each extension was framed as temporary, each upgrade sold as a bridge to the future. But that bridge has turned into a long road of delays, rising maintenance costs, and shrinking margins for error. The jets still fly, but the question is no longer whether they can take off. The question is how long Canada can keep pretending that extending yesterday's aircraft is the same thing as preparing for tomorrow's threats. And the threats are not theoretical anymore. The Arctic is becoming contested. Long-range patrol demands are increasing. Intercept timelines are tightening. The Air Force is being asked to cover more ground with less tolerance for downtime. In that environment, dependence is not just inconvenient. It becomes a strategic risk. So while much of the public conversation focused on familiar options behind the scenes, Ottawa started asking a different question. Not what is the most politically comfortable aircraft, not what is the easiest choice for alliance optics, but what platform actually fits Canada's geography, Canada's weather, Canada's distances, and Canada's need to operate without waiting for someone else to grant permission. That is where the story turns. Because behind closed doors, Canada is no longer just debating replacement timelines. It is weighing a decision that could reset the entire relationship between Canadian air power and American defense expectations. Canada is seriously considering Sweden's Gripen fighter jet. And this is not a routine change of supplier. It is a signal, a deliberate shift away from strategic autopilot. A move that says Canada intends to choose capability and independence over tradition. It is a decision that would force Washington and NATO planners to adjust assumptions they have relied on for decades. In other words, this is not simply about replacing old jets. It is about whether Canada is finally ready to control its air power destiny on its own terms. For Canadians who have watched their country quietly shoulder global responsibilities without demanding attention, this moment matters. It signals a shift in mindset. A decision to stop outsourcing strategic control and start defining national defense on Canadian terms. This is not about aircraft alone. It is about sovereignty, resilience, and finally aligning military capability with the reality of Canada's geography. The shock among allies stems from what the Gripen choice represents. For generations, Canadian defense planning has aligned closely with American recommendations. That alignment ensured seamless interoperability and simplified logistics. The idea that Canada might step outside this pattern and select a European platform designed for autonomy rather than dependence has sent ripples through Washington and NATO capitals. The Gripen follows a very different logic. It is built for nations that must operate alone if necessary. Designed for efficiency in extreme conditions, it reflects the reality of Canada's environment. It can operate from short, improvised runways and even public highways if required. Maintenance is modular. Turnaround times are short. These are not conveniences. They are necessities for patrolling the vast Arctic and northern regions where infrastructure is limited and response time is critical. The aircraft's electronic warfare suite gives pilots flexibility across surveillance, air defense, and multi-role combat missions while requiring far fewer logistical resources. The conclusion becomes clear. The Gripen is not simply a replacement for aging jets. It is a transformation of how Canada approaches air power. It prioritizes independence over habit. Washington's reaction has been cautious, but revealing. For decades, American planners assumed Canadian procurement would naturally align with U.S. systems, ensuring shared maintenance pipelines and integrated command structures. A Gripen decision disrupts that expectation. It raises questions about joint mission planning and challenges assumptions about long-term dependency. Within NATO, the response is nuanced. The Gripen is fully compatible with alliance communication standards, which undercuts fears of isolation. Yet integration will require adjustment. Exercises and joint operations must adapt to a force built around dispersion and autonomy rather than centralized control. Analysts in Brussels have already noted that these capabilities could strengthen NATO's northern flank. Dispersed operations, Arctic performance, and electronic warfare capacity add resilience. Canada's choice forces the alliance to rethink rigid standardization and move toward flexibility. Every hour a jet is grounded for complex maintenance represents lost sovereignty. The Gripen's design addresses this directly. Its efficiency and ability to operate in harsh conditions allow Canada to maintain presence across vast territory. Russian planners must now consider a new reality where Canada can sustain continuous monitoring through dispersed and survivable deployments. For Canadians between 40 and 65, this decision resonates deeply. It reflects values of self-reliance and practical innovation. The Gripen is not only a military asset but an industrial opportunity. Saab's proposal includes extensive technology transfer, local assembly, and co-development. Operational flexibility defines the platform. It can disperse rapidly, operate with minimal infrastructure, and return to readiness quickly. These qualities are essential for NORAD missions and Arctic patrols. The electronic warfare suite enhances survivability. Sensor fusion provides pilots with unmatched situational awareness. Modular maintenance allows small crews to sustain high sortie rates even in remote environments. Cost efficiency is another advantage. The Gripen is significantly less expensive to operate. Lower fuel use and maintenance costs allow Canada to acquire a larger fleet, train more pilots, and invest in complementary systems like drones and surveillance networks. Politically, the message is subtle but firm. Canada is choosing based on national interest rather than habit. This decision reshapes how allies and adversaries view Canada's role in global defense. The Arctic remains the strategic anchor. Short takeoff capability, cold weather endurance, and advanced sensors give Canada the ability to project power where it matters most. Dispersed operations ensure survivability even under threat. For the Royal Canadian Air Force, this transition enhances professional development. Pilots gain experience on a modern platform optimized for multi-role missions. Training can focus on Arctic conditions and complex joint operations. Globally, this choice may influence other nations. Medium-sized countries may reconsider dependency and seek platforms aligned with their geography and needs. Through Canada, the Gripen becomes a symbol of sovereignty and efficiency. This is not simply about replacing aircraft. It is about asserting control over national defense and embracing long-term foresight. The decision challenges assumptions in Washington, forces NATO to adapt, and compels Moscow to rethink northern strategy. Canada is no longer silent. It is choosing autonomy. This moment has the power to redefine alliances, strengthen Arctic defense, and alter perceptions of Canadian air power for decades. It represents a future built on independence, capability, and confidence. This is a defining chapter in Canadian military history, one rooted not in confrontation but in clarity. A decision to protect territory, strengthen industry, and secure sovereignty on Canadian terms. The conversation now belongs to the public. What matters most? Industrial growth, Arctic deterrence, strategic independence. Each reflects a different dimension of national strength. This is not just a procurement decision. It is a statement of who Canada chooses to be.